Hello everyone, this is Loco S, and welcome to Anvil Aerospace Day here at Invictus. I am in front of the Carrack, one of the larger ships in the game, and we're going to be starting our tour, not there. We're going to be starting our tour like we have been before. We're going to go down here, showcase the lower level. Now I will say that thankfully, in Star Citizen, the lower level here today actually has quite a bit of stuff going on. Anvil does actually have a platform for ground vehicles, known as the Atlas platform, and among the ground vehicle types we have the Spartan, the Centurion, and as we will see if we sneak over here, the Ballista. I will go over these in a little bit. They're actually some of my favorite vehicles in game, but I haven't bought any yet, and I'll explain why. But first, let's go ahead and preview the holo table. So as always, my recommendation with the holo table, my disclaimer with the holo table, and all these holo viewers are with all these concept ships. Do keep in mind that I do not really recommend buying them necessarily, unless they really speak to you and you're willing to part with your money. Because as always, these ships, CIG will occasionally on their website, on their progress tracker, say, "Oh, we're working on these ships," and then because of various reasons, they get pulled out, then they stop working on them, then they focus on other ships. So be prepared if you do buy these ships not to see them in game for a very long time. Plus, over the course of that very long development, the concept can change a bit. You're not going to get exactly what the image shows. Parts may change, ideas may change on mechanics. Generally, they have been lately, thankfully, sticking pretty close to the concept. So don't expect so you don't have to worry about a ship like this Anvil Liberator here changing from a large, basically mini carrier for your ships into, say, a small micro mining ship. They are pretty good about sticking to the concept, but don't expect it to be exactly like the concept. And also, keep in mind, you will get a loaner ship with these concept ships if you do buy them, but it might not be a ship that you like. So keep that in mind. Just be careful with concept ships. They are tricky all around. So Anvil Liberator, like I mentioned here, this is basically the pocket carrier of DCS. Of Star Citizen. The pocket carrier of DCS. No idea what that would be. We don't have a light carrier in DCS, but for Star Citizen, the Anvil Liberator is basically a pocket carrier. It has the ability to transport smaller ships in its quote-unquote hold, which is this bit in between these two outer rims, basically. The entire there's a little bit of a hangar bay inside, and there's actually a little bit of a hangar spot on top, as well as in front here, where you can basically park a ship and have the Liberator take it to its final destination. It's going to be useful once carrier gameplay comes in and these ships actually get made, because there are supposed to be areas of the verse, like Pyra, where the Pyra system is supposed to be so large and desolate, you need a ship like this to carry other ships around to actually make any, or basically the vast majority of ships in game useful or viable, unless you want to bring along a tanker and refuel along the way. So either you're going to use this or a tanker to transport your ships and get your ships from point A to point B. So it's definitely going to be a useful concept ship when it comes available. But personally, for me, it's weird. It's a large ship, yes, but I think it's even too small for a pocket to be for what I would consider useful for a pocket carrier. Only because you'd want to carry more ships, and you'd want to carry a bit more larger ships. The Drake Kraken is actually probably closer to what I believe is a more viable ship for full carrier gameplay. But a ship like this, if you're a small org, definitely useful. And there's Anvil Aerospace's shiny logo over there. Figured I'd just showcase that off for a little bit. Trying to also make these a record of HIAE, just to showcase what's the concept ship and what it was like back in the day for backers. as everyone's here is just facing the wall and people are in the hologram display. Yeah, they're stuck in there. Oh well. Anvil Legionnaire. This is basically a dedicated boarding craft. Now, whereas other Anvil ships are dedicated landing craft, this is very much a dedicated boarding craft, where it's going to actually be able to hack into a ship and dock with it, and basically force a dock and force a breach into the ship without having to like blow a hole in the side or other various methods like that. Definitely useful if your group is heavy into the PvP and the PvP FPS combat. Could also probably work in PvE. Not quite sure how AI are going to handle being boarded quite yet, or if you're going to be able to disable them to quite that extent. You should be able to, but I'd imagine this is definitely more of a PvP ship, and definitely for your FPS groups. So definitely kind of a very niche ship. No idea when this is going to be enabled, because ship-to-ship docking, I don't even think is really necessarily on the roadmap. A lot of ships have docking collars built into them as well, so it's not like the docking collars aren't built into the ships. It's just that the only docking collar that I think is currently available is the larger docking collar, as previously showcased on the on the Aegis Hammerhead. So that large, almost hexagon, like an elongated hexagon shape. That kind of docking collar was the only one I think that's currently available in game right now, and it's the larger docking collar. So, I'm not quite sure if, like, how useful the ship is going to be in the future, but if you really like the idea of boarding and FPS combat, it might not be the worst idea. But then again, concept ships, you're going to be waiting a very long time for it. Now, another ship that I personally find very interesting is the Anvil Crucible here. This is basically it's a mobile dry dock, effectively. It has the capacity to store a decently big fighter-sized ship in here, in this mobile bay. Plus, it has repair arms to actually repair larger ships out and around. It's a very, very old concept ship, and repair mechanics aren't even in game yet, so keep in mind, it's a really cool idea for repair gameplay, but we're very likely, if you want a ship that has repair gameplay probably more likely to come in the future, I would probably say it would be the Vulcan, just because of the scale and the size. Plus, I just have this gut feeling that a ship this large, it's been it's like a lot of the older concept ships, like the Banu Merchantman, the Hull C, they've kind of gotten forgotten throughout time almost, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Vulcan before we see this in terms of a repair ship. But overall, it's a really interesting idea if you want to have like a mobile dockyard to have this ship up and ready. Now, you do actually have repair gameplay in here, in the verse. It's just through the multi-tool, and your best bet there is to get basically a Starfarer if you want to play that gameplay right now, where you could basically be a mobile service station, have the Starfarer gas up a ship, go out, have someone with an RMC canister on their multi-tool, and go out and repair with their multi-tool, and then use a tractor beam tech to replace components and rearm missiles. So we're going to pick up the review at a nice clean spot here. We're going to go over now the Anvil Aerospace's Atlas platform series of ground vehicles. The Atlas platform covers 3 separate vehicles. They're all individual, unique frames, so it's not like you're buying an Atlas base and then buying on an add-on module. These are all unique frames built on the base vehicle. So, starting off with the Spartan. Spartan is basically the APC of the 3, and has the most amount of interior space. Spartan, as you can see up here, actually has some windows for the ground crew that we will be visiting shortly. There is also a ladder. I do not believe it is functional on the show floor variant. It might be functional on the one you buy or rent. I'll have to double check. It's definitely... if it's not functional now, it should be in the future. Now, as you'll note, the Anvil Spartan has a gun turret. The gun turret is actually controllable by the driver of the vehicle. And the cabin in all of the Atlas series ground vehicles is the same here, where you have basically a front view of the ground vehicle, the front view that your driver has. which is pretty decent visibility. You're a ground vehicle, so you don't really necessarily need a whole lot of downward visibility. Side visibility is a little bit blocked, but then again, it's supposed to be an armored vehicle. You're supposed to have protection from the side. You also have a decent amount of vertical visibility, so I guess if you're possibly going to be attacked by something from up above you, at least you'll know you're being attacked from up above. And a little bit of side-to-side visibility. Lots of displays, which will be useful, because this, unfortunately, this ship is very much a one-man show. And like I said, he does actually have a remote turret up there that he can, I believe he can either remote into it, or he can just use it as a slave turret to provide fire support for the infantry that he's carrying. And the Spartan has capacity for 8 infantrymen, 4 on each side, obviously. You have a gun rack off to the right-hand side, or the right-hand side or the left-hand side of each seat, depending on where you're sitting. And you also have these windows that point to the outside world. So at least you have some visibility of what's going on outside in the relatively tight compartment back here. But this is a good option if you have a lot of PvPers that you play with and you want to try to get yourself to the combat area all in one piece. Now, granted, there's other ways and other better ways to do it, but ground vehicles will eventually be useful. Also, as you've seen, one of the things I like about the Spartan is that there are 3 entrances and exits to the ship. So you have 2 at the waist on either side and 1 at the rear. So you do actually have flexibility in where you deploy your troops from. So you can use the Anvil Spartan as a bit of cover, and then you can basically exit, say, from this side and then move to the other side and use the APC, like I said, as cover. Also, if you're in a tight spot, you have a bit more flexibility on which way you need to disembark out of your APC. The Centurion here, on the other hand, is the AAA variant. So you can think of this, if you play DCS World, or if you know anything about real-life military hardware, you can think of this as the Gepard or the Shilka of Star Citizen. You have 2 smaller guns that the pilot or the driver actually has access to, as well as a huge turret back here that is only usable by the gunner back here. Now, you can solo this ship. It's not like, or rather this ground vehicle. You don't need to have a driver and a gunner, but obviously you're definitely gonna at least need one person to crew this ship for obvious reasons. You can't just drive this and set it up as an automatic turret yet. But the cool thing is that you can hop in there as a gunner, man the turret, and provide pretty decent coverage against fighter craft for your ground operations. And those guns back there, I believe they're size 4. So these are not these guns back here are not by any means small. They are quite hefty, and there are 4 of them. Plus, like I said, the driver has access to a twin turret up there to provide a little bit of extra firepower when defending against ships and infantry. Back here, we have basically what I like to call the SA-8 OSA of Star Citizen, using another DCSism. This is a mobile SAM site known as the Ballista. This was the very first Atlas platform vehicle that we got in game. The driver has access to a twin gun turret up front, providing a little bit of more close-in fire support as well as air defense coverage. But the main show are these missiles and torpedoes back here. Yes, I said torpedoes. In Star Citizen, these larger missiles here are considered torpedoes, and these up here are considered missiles. It just, I think after a certain size, the nomenclature, I think it's size 5. Size 5 is when the missiles start becoming called torpedoes. So this is very much a mobile SAM site, and you definitely get a lot of use out of this when you're trying to defend a installation or a ground target from air targets. So we'll go back here, and once again, it's very similar to the Centurion in terms of layout. You have your missile operator back here, and you have your driver up there. Driver controls his little gun turret, and the missile operator controls all of the missiles. Now, you do actually have 4 size, I believe, 4 missiles. And then you have 2 size, I think, 7 or 9 torpedoes. I'm not quite sure of the actual sizes. Sometimes Star Citizen changes things up, so it's a little bit sometimes hard to keep track of what size is what. But here comes the downside. These are the Ballista, Centurion, and even Spartan are all cool vehicles. They look cool. They look pretty intimidating. They're all useful in their own right, if ground vehicles were more useful. The problem is, very few ships can carry these actually into a combat area. The only ship that I know for certain that can carry at least one of these into combat is a Crusader Starlifter. Allergies. So, Crusader Starlifter can definitely carry one of these. One of those, but unfortunately, most other ships will struggle, if not be flat out outright incapable of carrying them. Even the mighty Carrack back there doesn't have the depth of its cargo bay in order to carry one of the Atlas series ships around. So it is something you're going to have to consider with the Spartan. You're definitely going to want to make sure you're buying a ship. You're actually buying a starship that can actually transport the vehicle into the combat area, as well as buying the actual Atlas platform vehicle. So, as much as I love the Atlas platform vehicles for their seeming utility and size, you're not going to be able to really use them unless you have a massive ship to go along with it. Namely, I think, like I said, right now I believe the only ship capable of even carrying that is a Starlifter. Complete opposite side of the world. What can be carried by more vehicles than even the Atlas platform is the CR8 Pisces, as well as the C8 Pisces here. The Carrack, showcased behind right there, can actually carry these Pisces snub fighters. These are actually sold also as starter ships, because these ships actually are sold and sold with a quantum drive, so you can actually use these to get around the verse. And like I said, these are actually part of a starter package, so you can pick up these as a starter package as your first starter ship, and they're actually quite useful as a starter ship. Depending on which Pisces variant you get, you can either get a base variant, you can get for a little extra money, you can get the C8X Expedition variant, which has 2 more guns, or you can get the C8R Pisces Rescue, which is actually one of the very few, it's one of the very few ships in the game that actually is dedicated to medical gameplay. Now, medical gameplay is in a bit of a rough spot right now, because sometimes people are calling in medical beacons to ask for help, and then they are shooting you and trying to loot your stuff, but it is a viable gameplay loop. You can, if you can get really good at, do. You have a little bit of a medical bay back here. You have I think it's a tier 3 medical bed, which basically can heal the lightest of injuries, as well as stabilize you and get your health back up, your base health back up. You can't heal tier 2 or tier 1 injuries from there. There's a little bit of a medical terminal right here, as well as a chair for when the patient is done. They can sit right there. Or if you want to do a 2-man crew, you can have a pilot there, as well as a rescue operator here that you can jump out and do the medical work. But the base variant of the Pisces is more of a cargo ship. You have room for 4 SU of cargo, which is a healthy amount of cargo that you can find at a salvage site. Plus, you actually have 2 jump seats, as well as a main pilot seat here. Pisces is actually what I would recommend. I would have actually, it's weird. The Pisces wasn't originally concepted as a starter ship. It was actually concepted as a snub that is dedicated to the Anvil Carrack. But because it's becoming coming to its own over the past couple of years as its own individual ship, I would actually say if you want to start out in the verse, the C8 Pisces, which is the starter variant or the base variant of the Pisces, is actually a decent ship. You can run a little bit of cargo. You can do box missions fairly easily with the 4 SU cargo space in the back. Plus, you have 2 individual seats if you want to carry along crew members or friends to do ground ops. And it's just in general a decent-sized starter ship. So, C8X Pisces actually gets a seal of approval. Now, I do want to swing around here later on to cover the rest of these ships here, because these are all some of the more interesting ships that Anvil has to offer. But first, we're going to go into the side hall and cover these. Oh, and I should probably mention the F8 Lightning here is technically considered an Anvil ship. You cannot buy this either in-game or for concept. You actually have to buy, I believe you have to buy it either in-game after earning the right to buy it via completing the Squadron 42 campaign, or CIG if you basically spend an insane amount of money on this game, more than what's really worth it. You can actually, as a show of thanks from CIG, receive an F8 Lightning of your own. Now, you do have it on the show floor here, and you can actually sit inside of the F8 Lightning. It's a one-man heavy fighter, which is interesting because most of the heavy fighters are two-man ships.
Invictus
Go here.
great opportunity to see your taxes at work.
Anvil Aerospace. All systems.
And it's a fully, it is a fully complete ship that is available for you to, you will be able to, I believe, fly in the campaign of Squadron 42, I believe. I'm not saying that for certain, but I get the feeling that they're designing it for Squadron 42, and that's why it's a fully fleshed out cockpit and components inside. It isn't, however, is not available for use inside the verse. You can kind of hijack one, but you don't actually get to keep it. It's very much it's in the verse, it's there for show, but it's sort of not really available for us players yet. Or at the very least, it is ready, and CIG is keeping it from us right now for various plot and lore reasons. Now, an older heavy fighter that we do have in game from Anvil is the Hurricane. Hurricane is interesting because it has 2 guns that the pilot has to operate, and you would think, oh, it's a heavy fighter, but there are only 2 guns. Well, thing is, with the Hurricane, there's a pilot seat here at the very nose who gets to wield 2 guns, and a couple of I think 4 missiles here in bespoke launchers, which is something that CIG is doing more and more as time goes on. But back here, underneath the ship, there's a gunner seat. Now the gunner seat here, I'll go to F4 view and go up. So the gunner of the Anvil Hurricane actually sits in a turret back here, and he mans a turret, and this is where the majority of the firepower of the Hurricane sits. This puts the C8, sorry, not C8, this puts the Hurricane in a very interesting spot. The Hurricane is very much meant and is only viable as a 2-person ship, but because of the turret mechanics that CIG has implemented in-game, it is actually one of the most powerful PvP ships in the verse, as well as a very powerful PvP ship, a PvE ship, because the turrets actually have a different capacitor system than the actual ship, and they're just overall, you get a wide field of arc from those turrets, massive amount of guns, massive amount of large guns, I should say, for the Hurricane, which means you could really put a lot of hurt out. But it is at a massive disadvantage in some ways because you need a friend in order for the ship to be viable. So if you have friends who play a lot and they're constantly on and you're always guaranteed to have, or most of the time you're guaranteed to have a gunner, then this might not be a bad ship for you. But if you struggle sometimes to have friends who are on all the time that you are, or always keep in mind that life circumstances can change, and people who you once thought were going to be ride hard or die types for a certain game, they might all disappear one day. You might have a hard time finding crew to make this ship perfectly viable. So, good ship if you have friends, otherwise be careful. Now, a ship that is very much an org-only ship is the Anvil Valkyrie. Now, this is a really cool ship. It is not, I mean, it is definitely a large ship, but it's not a huge ship by any means. But this is pretty much a purely dedicated drop ship. Now, in the back here, you have a bit of cargo space back here, and this is mainly meant for ground vehicles. Now, you can fit, I don't believe that the Anvil platforms can, well, it's the Anvil platform of the Atlas. You might be able to barely squeeze one in here, but this is more or less meant for Cyclones back here. Cyclones or combat bikes, some of those smaller vehicles can easily fit in here. But the other thing you can do is you can actually, I believe, fit cargo in here, and that could be useful if you're doing a if you're doing a mission or you're doing an operation where you need to retrieve cargo from a battle site. You can easily just dump it in here and be good to go. But where the real purpose of the ship comes into play is beyond these doors here, where this is very much a dropship where you are supposed to carry a whole bunch of infantry into battle, with 5 seats on every side here. You have 10 infantrymen in this wing, but in addition, you have 10 infantrymen in this wing. So you basically, your whole job is to deploy an entire an entire platoon's worth of infantry into a battlefield. Plus, give them plenty of fire support, because this here is a turret for the lower half of the ship. But wait, that's not all. Opening up this door, you have 2 door gunners. One here on the right side and one there on the left side. And these doors open up and close. So let's see here if I can find the... Yeah, we'll just use that right now. There we go. You swing it on a door handle, and then you could deploy the heavy machine gun. And obviously the guns are depowered for Invictus, because it would be a bit of a war crime, if not an absolute just plain hideous, to actually use these in a IE Ship Expo where you have new players here. So we're going to put this back, because we are not going to troll new players with that. Going up to the top, you have access to even more guns and turrets, if the character can actually climb. There we go. You have a top turret right there, and you actually have 2 side turrets on either side. So you have a lot of turrets on the ship, plus it's supposed to carry a lot of people to battle. This is very much a armored dropship gunship. Also, I should mention, pilot sits up here in the front. He has okay visibility. He has a little bit of visibility down below right there for a window on the floor, plus a bit of side windows down there. It's made, but really he's not going to have a whole lot of visibility in this ship. It's going to be he's going to be very reliant on finding a drop zone. Hold on. Sorry. It's going to be very much reliant on finding someone to either find the drop zone or kind of nosing down, looking for the drop zone, and then sort of eyeballing it, dead reckoning it onto that little bit of open space for him. As the servers are chugging along. Alright, servers, stay with me a little bit longer. We have quite a bit of ways to go, unfortunately, for Anvil Day. So, hopefully, chugging along here, we have a couple more beds here. We have beds here for the crew. 5 in total, plus a little bit of a cooking station, as well as a ship's bathroom. There is only 1 bathroom for a grand total of 25 people at full capacity, so hopefully you all went before you came onto this ship. And with that, I'm going to leave the Valkyrie dropship. Definitely a ship meant for larger groups. It's not, you're not going to get much use out of this as a solo person, so buy this as part of an org, not as a solo player. Also, by the way, those side turrets I mentioned, they're right here. So you do get at least good visibility and coverage from that. That's one side turret gunner position right there. Moving on. We have the 2 Hornet variants, and as you can see here, the F7A Hornet is not currently available for combat flight for civilian purposes. And I do believe that is actually because this is the Hornet that, again, sort of like with the F8 Sea Lightning, this is very much a military-only ship currently in the verse. What you do have access to are the F7 Sea Hornets, which is an older variant of the Hornet. Decent amount of firepower. It supposed to come with a chin turret gun, but as I believe that is an optional chin turret mount. They also have an optional, I believe, dorsal mount up there. That I believe is affixed on the civilian variant. But they do come equipped with 2 guns, at least, as well as a missile bay that falls out from underneath here. The Hornet series is kind of getting up there in age, and it's not necessarily the greatest fighter with its lack of base with standard armament, with only having 2 guns compared to like the Sabres 4. But you could definitely outfit this F7 with more guns if as needed and as desired. There is a variant that is weirdly not at display here in Invictus, known as the F7CM Super Hornet, which has 2 guns underneath the nose, 2 guns on the wings, as well as a turret in the back that can be manned by a second player to give you more versatility in using that turret for a total of 6 guns on a Hornet. And that is a much more viable, the Super Hornet is much more viable than the regular base Hornet. So definitely worth the extra money to go for the Super Hornet. Plus, the Super Hornet can be solo flown, and when solo flown, you do get access to all 6 guns. For basically the loadout, the F7A here basically is effectively what the loadout is for the Super Hornet, with the 2 guns up top, 2 guns underneath the nose, 2 guns on the wings. But this is a single pilot only craft. Showcase the cockpit in here because unfortunately, the other problem is also with the Hornet series is that they are very old ships and they have yet to go through even like a minor update pass. So you'll see when we get in here if our player decide. There we go. Wouldn't be surprised if the servers start acting up. You can't flip back in.
All systems online.
Invictus launch week is a great
There you go. There's the inside of the
as members of the
F7A Hornets.
right to inspect the latest acquisition.
It's a bit of a it's a bit different from the standard Hornet that I know of. But yeah, you can't buy that in-game quite yet. Or probably maybe never. I'm not quite sure what CIG's plans are for the F7A. It might be something they might release like after Squadron 42, or you have to like complete so much progress in Squadron 42 to unlock it. F7C again, I would honestly give it a pass or go for the F7CM Super or Sabre just because you want to get a little bit more firepower from your medium fighter than just what's with the base Hornet. And that's Anvil's side haul. You can see NPCs and the like are trying to go a little bit crazy. Unfortunately, this is very... I do believe it is fair to give you guys the unvarnished Star Citizen experience. And I will say the past 2 days, or the past 2 halls that I was at, the MISC and Crusader Industries Hall on the day 1, and day 3's Anvil, Aegis Defense, what is it? Aegis Dynamics. Those days were a lot more stable Then today is just, this is pretty bad for Star Citizen. Moving on to the Hawk. The Hawk here, very much a single. Now this is very much a dedicated single-player ship. There is room for one person in the back, in the tail here, but this is actually basically a, how to put this lightly, a prisoner seat. So giving you a first-hand view of what a prisoner would be. So this is very much the Anvil Hawk is very much a bounty hunter ship. So you load your prisoner up into here. He has all of this room to live and exist in. So now that finally actually closed up. Wonder if it'll. There we go. Let's be out. Anvil Hawk is interesting. The ship folds out. This is its landing position. When it folds out, the wing comes out and faces downward more. Different wings and everything changes around. This ship has does have an EMP, I believe, so you can use this to disable ships. Plus, I believe as default, it becomes with these Joker sucker punch cannons to disable ships, as well as a small armament of these laser cannons to actually fight back and attack ships. So it is very much it is basically the competitor to I would say the Aegis Stalker, but where the Aegis Stalker you're actually collecting a whole bunch of bounties all and loading them up into the back. This is very much a one-man. You're going out there, you're attacking one bounty, you're disabling, you're using your systems and weapons to disable him, and then you're bringing him in. Not necessarily the best combat fighter, but when bounty hunting gameplay starts coming into effect, becomes more of a thing in the verse where you're actually going to have to capture and bring people in. This is going to become very much a big part of that gameplay, using the bounty hunter cells to actually bring in people. On to one of my favorite ships, although I really don't get to use it all that much because, unfortunately, there's not much point to using it, sadly, is the Anvil Terrapin. It's a really cool, I really love the look of the ship. It has two little guns in the front, but it's mainly actually a recon and exploration ship. It's very thickly armored, so you have all these huge sets of armor all around, and you have this armored door that it leads into. Plus, these engines actually are some of the first VTOL engines that we got in game. There's only one entrance on the other side. Plus, there's actually armor plates that seal the ship up to provide even more armor defense, but at the cost of not being able to vent as much heat. So Anvil Terrapin there, you can close the door, seal this up all nicely. There actually is a bed. There's a little bed and a little shower. Plus you have all these different compartments here that open and close up. And when scanning gameplay and mapping become more of a thing, you actually have a dedicated seat here for a scanner. So you can run this as a two-man operation, but the ship could theoretically be used solo. And you have the cockpit here. We'll sit in here. You have quite a lot of displays all around. Visibility is decent all around for an exploration ship. You don't have a lot of... it's also supposed to be well armored, so you're not going to get the greatest visibility off to the sides or down below. Cool thing is, I do believe in certain configurations, you could actually have armored plates come in, and it'll pop over some of these windows, and they'll even seal you up even more. It's been a while since I've flown the Terrapin, so I don't know if they've changed the bindings for that or not. So we're gonna hop out there. So as much as I love the ship, I'll have to give it a... I would recommend buying this only if you really love the design of the ship and you really like the idea of exploration gameplay. Unfortunately, both of those things right now are not implemented in-game, so really your money would be better spent elsewhere. It's just that it is still a flyable, decent ship that you can use to like get around. Plus, I believe you can use the interior to unload small box missions and the like, but it's not like the Pisces where you actually have a dedicated space for cargo. So, Anvil, so I will say the Terrapin, cool ship, but I wouldn't get it right now unless you really like the idea of exploration gameplay and you really like the style of the ship. Now, could actually lead me into another ship that I love, that I unfortunately will have to say give a hard pass to. It is the Anvil Gladiator. Gladiator is a light bomber, so unlike Aegis Dynamics and their size 9 wielding bombers, the Eclipse and the Retaliator, the Gladiator uses smaller torpedoes located in a smaller bomb bay down below, right here. Let's see if I... There you go, right there. But its advantage, unlike the Eclipse, is that yes, it's a single seat, it can be flown single seat, but it has more guns. So it has 2 guns on either wing, plus it has a remote turret that can be operated by a second crew member, and it's not completely defenseless even after it burns through its 4 torpedoes, because it actually has racks that can be swapped out for different types of missiles, and then the standard loadout is actually, I believe, 8 size 2 missiles. So you're not entirely defenseless against fighter targets with just these 2 guns. You could also use the missiles to fight off the fighter-sized targets, and then go in with the kill with the size 5 torpedoes on larger ships. Plus, if your fighter screen is good enough, you can also use the size 2 missiles and guns to weaken a larger ship, and then go for the kill with the size 5s. So it will serve a lot of use in the verse once larger ships become more prevalent for player versus player battles, and things like Xeno Threat become more stable, where missile gameplay then becomes more viable, because like with every single other ship that is a missile boat, you are at the mercy of the missile gods if the missile netcode works and they hit. So, would have to unfortunately give this a pass, even though it is a well-balanced bomber ship. You definitely don't need the person up there manning that turret, but it definitely helps, so that's another thing that kind of is a little bit of a knock against the ship. The second turret gunner up there helps to have it, but it's not like you're not going to lose sleep if you don't have a second player with this. One very last thing I should mention. Yeah, this ship looks old. Yeah, it really needs an update. You can kind of tell with like their materials, and the modeling looks decent. We can kind of tell the materials and the materials, the textures. This is very much an older ship that needs a gold standard pass in order to really make it shine. Bring up the texture quality up to par. Bring up the reflection tech up to par. Implement the removable components. All sorts of things. Really, the cockpit is where it's going to need the love and attention, and we'll actually showcase that before I head on out. And there really is a cool animation to get in here, but you can definitely see the cockpit really needs the overhaul the most. The base ship looks decent, but the cockpit here looks really bad. The other thing I should mention is that unfortunately this ship also is a bit of a pain to actually get into. There we go, now we're in the gunner seat, so kind of get an idea of like the gunner's view, which is pretty unobstructed, which is cool. gunner has his own controls. But then again, the cockpit really needs, and the gunner seat really do need overhauled in order to make the ship look good. So unfortunately, with those two things in mind, ship actually has storage. Neat. They must have just added that recently because that wasn't there the last time I flew this aircraft. But overall, I would still unfortunately have to give this a pass. It's just not quite up to snuff. Cool idea. I love mine, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend other people get it quite yet. Wait for it to get a gold standard pass and then consider buying the Anvil Gladiator. Now, a ship that you could recommend getting, and I do believe they sell this as a starter package, is the Anvil Aero. The Anvil Aero is a light fighter. Very similar in performance and sort of in the same weight / fighter category as the Anvil Gladius. So it is the Aegis Gladius. And I do believe the Aegis Gladius was at one time, so when I backed the game originally, the Aegis Gladius was actually the light fighter starter package. I do believe they have gotten rid of that and have now replaced it with the Anvil Aero as your light fighter starter package. Still a good ship though, however. You have 4 guns. You have 2 guns on a turret up above, and then you have 2 wing-mounted guns. I do believe that unlike most other fighters, they actually do give you a bit of a different loadout. It's not all just Panther repeaters. You do get ballistics on the wing mount and on the ventral mount up here. On the top of the ship, you actually have 2 neutron repeaters. Plus, you have a decent missile loadout here. I've picked one up out of just curiosity. Back when I was in my mood, back when I was more of in the mood to buy more ships in game. It's a decent ship. It has pretty decent performance all around, but I tend to not fly mine because I'm more of an Aegis person. But definitely not a bad choice if you're really dedicated into the combat side of gameplay. Definitely not a bad ship to start off your combat gameplay career with. I do believe, though, it would be considered technically like a higher tier package starter, though. So you are going to be paying a bit more, but it's still a decent option if you want to put a bit more into your first ship for Star Citizen. Now, keep in mind, as a starter package, if you do get this as a starter package, this does kind of, unfortunately, lock you into doing only combat. There's no storage for boxes. There's no storage for cargo space. So keep in mind that if you do pick this up as your starter ship, you are going to be locked into combat gameplay more or less. But it is a good ship. I would also highly recommend this as a secondary ship if you have a starter ship and you want a light fighter to use in-game. Between this and the Gladius, you really can't go wrong with either ship. Just the Gladius is more focused on missile gameplay. And also I will say the Gladius is a bit more, it's going to be up to date more often because that is Squadron 42's main ship. The Anvil Aero here, on the other hand, is more focused on guns. Hey everyone, Luck OS here. Unfortunately, as I was exploring the Carrack, the game crashed yet again. So, here we go. All we have left to do now is go over the Carrack, so hopefully this shouldn't take too long. So, Anvil Carrack is an exploration ship. You have a little bit of a vehicle bay here where you enter in from the ramp. This is the only entrance into the ship on the ground is through this ramp. You have a little bit of a vehicle bay here. You can store some hover bikes in here, or you can store a Cyclone. This is access to a ladder that takes you up into the actual ship. Or, using this little bit of a... you can use this door here. Oh, before I go any further... One of the coolest features I like about this ship. There's a little bit of a ramp here, so you can stop ships and vehicles from going all the way and blocking the door. Plus, you get a little bit of FPS cover. So, going into this little room here, a little bit of an airlock room from the outside vehicle bay. We have a docking collar. That is the smaller circular docking collar that is not yet implemented in the game yet. Plus, you have the side elevator here that takes you up to the various decks. Although we're going to go into the back here to showcase the back. You have three bays here. Eventually, you'll be able to swap these bays out with other options, but for right now, you just have cargo. And you eventually end up in a bit of an armory back here. You have gun racks on either side. You also have suit lockers here. You also have suit lockers in the EVA in the docking collar room, but you have also several more suit lockers back here for various purposes. You have an aft turret room here, so you can actually man the turret on the belly of the ship. And take the elevator, call the elevator down here. And there you go. Equips it a half deck, which is the second deck of this ship. So it pops you up in the very back end. The elevator pops you up in the very back end of the second floor of the ship. You circle around the medical bay, and you can enter in from this side. A little bit of an airlock here for the medical bay. You have two beds on either side. Your primary med bed, however, is beyond this glass door. You actually have a medical assistant here. You can go ahead and set this as your spawn point if this was a ship that you owned. So you can have a spawn point here and also get fully recovered in this bed. Plus you have beds here also you can rest in. You have a doctor's office here for your medical professionals. You'll have more access to do more tools here. And on the opposite side, there's a bit of storage for medical supplies and the like. There we go. We have to open the door. Plus, there's that door right there. That is the actual door into the backup ladder that you can use. We had earlier saw at the vehicle bay. So there's your ladder, there's your backup Jeffries tube and ladder to go up and down the decks. You have your front elevator to move around right there. On the habitation deck, you have on the right hand side, this is where the crew live and sleep. You have room for 5 crew members, each with their own bed as well as their own little locker and a couch. Showers are in here. Two showers. And go into this little rec room out front here. Pass by this billiards table, plus a nice view into the outside world. And you have your toilets for your crew members back here. Now we can pop in here because the door is open. This is the mess hall. You can have your little bit of a kitchen and a dining room area. But as you notice that, also a nice window to the outside world, but you also have noticed it's a bit smaller than that side because the rest of the room up here is taken up by a captain's quarters. You have his office up here, a little bit of a window, a little curio cabinets right there, basically. Go over here through this door. You have a bed, more cabinet, more storage, locker space for the captain. Plus, the captain has his own private bathroom. Next up, we have the bridge, and we're going to enter the bridge on the lower floor. If you're entering in from the habitation deck, you have three operator seats here. The center one is the pilot for the Carrack. There is a secondary pilot seat, however, for the Carrack. It's not the primary seat, but it is a secondary seat that you can use if you need to. And it is here on the upper bridge. Where on the upper bridge you have 2 more seats for support seats. And up here you get an idea of just how wide the view is. Get a nice, this nice big glass nose of the Carrack gives you quite a bit of visibility. Plus, you can also be, as a crew member, not even piloting the ship up here and looking around and getting a very good idea of what's around you from up here. This station up here, by the way, is the secondary command station. Is the command station, and it is a secondary spot that you can pilot the ship from. The primary spot being down below. This hollow globe, by the way, is non-functional as of this moment. Going back here, we have 6 escape pods that are located towards the front of the ship on the second of the more usable quote-unquote floors. This is actually the 3rd deck in the ship in total. You have a repair room here, so where you can repair components and the like that you encounter on your various journeys, plus FPS gear. You can also repair them and maintain them there. You have a drone operator room here. We'll go in. Might as well go in. So you have a drone operator seat there, and plus you can use this drone bay to pull them out, work on them in here, and then use them to explore. Here's a very interesting room up here. You actually have a bit of a hangar bay. Hopefully this isn't a sign of a server crash. But, oh, there it is. So, you can use that console and open up the hangar bay. This hangar bay is specifically built for a C8 Pisces, which is a starter ship that you can also buy individually, like I mentioned previously. So, C8 Pisces can come in here, dock, and be fully secured inside here. Do keep in mind that if you do use the C8 Pisces in this room up here, you will unfortunately have to be very careful about opening and closing that door up there from that console, because otherwise you could potentially open up that door, and vent the entire top deck of the vessel. The side doors located on either side of the backhand of this technical deck is basically the engineering room. Plus, you have turret access here on either side. So these are the ball turrets that extend from the sides of the ship. You also have a small engineering room up here where you can man and control things. But if you need to really get into the nitty-gritty, you can actually open up the engineering room. You can actually go into the engineering room yourself here. You can either go down this set of stairs there, or you can go ahead and use the elevator. And as you can see, there's a lower engineering bay as well. Plus, you have fuel tanks and servicing on either side of the engineering room on the lower floor there. So, that's it for the technical deck. Now, we do want to actually go into here real quick, because there's one more room that we have to cover in the elevator. And that is at the cartography deck. Now, cartography deck is an interesting place. You have this giant room here that you can all gather around and look at this giant holo display and figure out where you want to take your next adventure. That's currently not implemented quite yet, but it will be in the future. Plus, you actually have these side rooms here where you have escape pods and suit lockers because, in addition to windows, because up here you have an airlock that you can use to actually exit outside the ship from above. So you do actually have an airlock, a nice airlock view up here. Plus, you can also use this room up here as a bit of a ATC control room here, where you can actually not control necessarily the bay doors for the hangar, but you can easily watch someone depart or enter and guide them in from up here. Let's end the view on the nose, because you can actually, while the airlock is deployed, walk very carefully along the edge here and get on top the nose of the Carrack. So, that ends up today's day on Anvil Aerospace. I will say, wrapping this up, some things I want to mention. Anvil Carrack, buy or not buy. It is a very beautiful ship. I love my Carrack. However, it is a very expensive ship, and its primary use of exploration isn't in-game. And in fact, many of the rooms on the Carrack, as you've noticed, are feature mechanics that are not currently available. The cartography room on the top deck we just exited, not available. The drone operator room, not available. The repair room for FPS components and various components you find out in the field for ship components, not available, not working right now. The various bays that you could swap out on the very belly of the ship, not available right now. So, the Carrack is really useful as basically right now a mid-tier, fairly chunky cargo ship that has access to carry a lot of people as well as some ground vehicles. But that's really all there is to the Carrack. Beautiful ship. I personally love it. There's a lot of people who love the Carrack, but it is also very much a ship that you basically, I would recommend working towards in game right now. Unless you really have a lot of money to burn and you love it, I wouldn't recommend getting the Carrack at this time. So I also mentioned that one of the two support chairs down below in the cockpit can also manage that turret up there. Something I forgot to mention. So that's Anvil's day here at IAE. As you notice, the game is crashing quite a bit. It could very well be just because of the Intergalactic Aerospace Expo. I'll have to continue keeping an eye on bugs and whether or not on serviceability for this game. Hopefully things continue on and working and they continue improving. I can only imagine that once IAE is over, the game becomes a little bit more stable. We're not 30K every couple of seconds. So that's it for here at Anvil today at IAE. I will see you all in hopefully Thursday, because Thursday is basically a whole bunch of smaller ship manufacturers. A lot of different small ship manufacturers. They'll all have their own little ships there. I do also believe that would probably be the Tumbril Storm Day, where they're going to on IAE showcase the RSI Lynx that is going to be released on that day. Plus, then also showcase or do a Q&A and showcase of the Tumbril Storm concept ship. Concept tank, rather. So, until then, this is LockOS, signing out.